Welcome to the Black Town Hall at the historic YMI. We are joined here by candidates for NC District 11. If you are coming into the room, please earnestly find your seats. There are snacks and beverages to my left. Sounds good? My name is Dr. Maris Lavender. I'm the founder of Love, Joy, Liberation Community Relations Firm, and I have the absolute honor and privilege of moderating this panel, or how I've come to think about it is doing an interview of folks that are seeking to represent us in DC. So I'd like us all to relax into that notion that this is their job interview, and we are their employers. And as such, we have direct questions to ask about how you will represent us at the federal level. Sound good? I like a lot of verbal feedback to know that I'm in the room with other people. Yes?
Yes.
We all came out this evening, it's dark, to show up for these candidates and ourselves to be informed voters. So let's relax into the community aspect of this. And because we are in Asheville, one of the greatest things I learned in Asheville was the value of a deep breath. So I will invite all of you all to ground your feet, to feel yourself in your chair. And as we seek to build our democracy in a more perfect union, let's take a collective breath in through the nose, and out through the mouth. One more time, in through the nose. Sigh out of the mouth. This last one, I invite you to give it all you got. Make some noise. In through the nose. Welcome to today. Thank you all for being here. For those of you all who don't know me, I'm an educator at heart. So before I get into asking our panelist discussions, I want to do just a bit of level setting about what they're trying to get themselves into here. So in NC District 11, these folks are seeking to represent the interests of individuals from Cherokee to Avery counties. This covers a good portion of western North Carolina, and as we all can imagine, these issues are varied, but there are things that are tying us together as a rural portion of the state. All candidates tonight for this race, both the Democratic and Republican, were invited. And we are joined today by these 4 Democratic candidates. Please raise your hand and wave when I say your name. Zelda Briarwood. Dr. Richard Hudspeth. Lee Whipple. And Paul Maddox. Candidates tonight will not only be sharing the stage, they will be sharing a mic, and so we will have grace with our timing, and we really want to honor the time constraints on any answers that are offered so that us as constituents can learn as much as possible about each of you all. So I am going to be on a stricter side. So when I raise my hand and the minute is up, or Jefferson signals that means time is up. Okay? Thumbs up for my candidates?
Yes.
Beautiful. A little bit more level setting. So you all are aiming to join our Congress at a profound and pivotal moment in time. I'm sure we've said that forever. We should continue to say that because democracy is something that has to be continually fought for and realized, and that is no different for our current generation. Your job as folks representing this district is to legislate at the federal level with local interests in mind, keeping in mind what the very issues of us as constituents have in this room, and then saying how does this apply across the nation. You also are providing oversight to the federal government, including the right to submit articles of impeachment, should the federal government not be meeting the needs of its people. Do you understand that as your role? Great. This is a great test because we are now moving into this first portion of this conversation, which will be very direct yes or no questions. Do we understand what a yes or no question is? Yes. There will be opportunity to explicate, but for the purpose of this, and if any of us are visual, we have tables. You want direct answers to your policy perspectives, and then you will be offered an opportunity to elucidate on that, but we want to make sure that we clearly understand if you're a yes or a no. And again, this will be your job as a House of Representative member, where you will have to vote yay or nay and respond to us as your constituents on if we agreed with that choice or not. Correct? Does my audience understand what we're here to do today?
Yes.
Does this sound like a good thing to do today?
Yes.
You all were offered opportunities to ask questions on these Post-it notes, so we'll go yes or no questions. We'll open it up for some dialogue in the second portion, and as our final act, we will we'll take a break after that, because we have bodies that have needs. And then we'll return to some audience questions and see what these folks in the room have to ask you all. Great. Okay, with that being said, one last thing about the federal government. So we are anticipating a $5.7 trillion budget deficit as a part of this current administration's policy choices. We have seen the gutting and dismantling of federal agencies, the movement of dollars to fund federal agents, or the proposed study of fraud and abuse that didn't yield the results it promised to. We know that national literacy rates are plummeting, including in North Carolina. We know that climate change is an ever-present issue, with Helene absolutely decimating this area right here, our own home. And AI data centers pose an additional climate risk, and we have some proposed in this very area as well. Most North Carolinians, like other Americans, do not have adequate access to health care or life insurance or access to fair and equitable education. And we know that there is a continual risk of continual disruption across the nation. Your role will be to unite across difference at the federal level to legislate things that make a change right on the ground here. And on our end as voters, we have a big decision to make. North Carolina is a key race that's happening right in the state, and many people in this nation are looking to us to make an informed choice on who we do send to that body that will potentially legislate a new world for us or more of the same. So, with that being said, are you proud to be a North Carolinian? Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes. You can actually just wait. We don't have to do that, sorry. Let me say this.
Of course, yes.
Okay. Wait, pause me. If it's, you can just raise your hand if you're a yes. Thank you. Perfect, thank you. I'm glad we tested that out. That would just be so much. Okay. All right, for our first discussion, our first question today. Residents in Western North Carolina, like those in Canton, after the closing of the local paper mill, are seeing rising energy costs and have expressed worries about the planned location of a data center in their community. There are several bills related to regulating energy costs and climate impacts of data centers. Would you vote yay or nay on these efforts? If you are a yay, please raise your hand. Great. For a specific question on that, would you support rural communities having self-determination on whether these data centers are located in their communities? Would you support the current bill to stop hikes to electricity costs and to have companies carry their own financial load on the grid? I'll move us along to our second question. Actually, 1 second, can I break the fourth wall? I do want you guys to hit these guys. The second question is about public land use. Right in Asheville, we have a fiery campaign to save the woods. UNC Asheville boasts a urban forest, which has been, I'm trying to say, my moderator language on. It's been a challenge in our community on who has a right to just decide what is public land. Is it the local community and the folks that live here and utilize this space, or is this a state level decision? Currently, the General Assembly of North Carolina has passed an act to say that the state can circumvent local ordinances and zoning laws in favor of using public lands as universities like UNC see fit way in Chapel Hill. The question is, would you vote yea or nay on efforts to retain local oversight of zoning and ordinances of public lands?
Yay.
Yay. ICE has been deployed across the United States, including here in North Carolina, raising concerns of federal government overreach, the erosion of constitutional rights, and the loss of due process. As a representative of Western North Carolina, will you vote yea or nay to abolish ICE?
Yay.
Nay. For those, for Mr. Whipple, why are you a nay?
I think ICE is a possible useful tool, as Obama used them to target criminals, criminal immigrants, and I think it could be used properly.
The way ICE is being used now is reprehensible, and it needs to be, all the people that Trump hired need to be fired, and there needs to be no more hiring of ICE agents, and they need to be trained. But I feel that there's a place for the federal agency.
Okay. To clarify, I'm going to repeat for the room. You believe that you would support legislation to have a federal immigration agent services at the federal level?
Yeah, I mean, I think what's happening now needs to be brought before the Supreme Court to be stopped, because it's a private army that the administration controls, which is against the Constitution. So yeah, I'm horrified at this situation, but I try not to take positions that are too harmful to our cause.
Great. Thank you for adding nuance to the answer. Appreciate it. There is additional, I'm going to stay there for a second. For those who, Mr. Whipple, since you're a nay, you can opt in or out. But there is an act in the House currently to prohibit the Department of Security from using funds from the detention and monitoring of immigrants and to end those contracts. Would you support the reallocation of those funds to community-based organizations, so taking the money from ICE and giving it to the community? There have been several accountability measures offered in the House in response to the deaths of folks that have died in ICE custody, and currently federal agents, ICE agents, are not able to be, they have qualified immunity for any murders that happen in their care. Do you support the continued qualified immunity of ICE agents? Great, thank you so much. Moving on to marriage equality. There have been attempts or threats to overturn marriage equality at the federal level. Would you support the codifying of equal marriage for Americans? There is a current constitutional amendment to overturn Citizen United, which allows private dollars to be offered to candidates in races. Do you support the constitutional amendment to get rid of Citizens United? Will you vote yay or nay to establish term limits, reimagine the Electoral College?
Which term limits?
Will you establish term limits and reimagine the Electoral College as a part of your policy agenda in the House?
That's like two things.
Sure, sorry, excuse me. Will you vote yay to establish term limits? Will you vote yay or nay to reimagine the Electoral College? Do you support mid-session gerrymandering of congressional districts? If there was a bill presented to reinstate and codify Roe v. Wade, would you vote yay or nay?
Yay.
Would you extend those bodily autonomy protections for all Americans, including trans Americans?
said hiring, right? What did you say? Hiring practices?
No. Extend the rights to all.
Yeah, okay.
There are several bills related to reparations in the city of Asheville, and Buncombe County actually passed a local reparations initiative. Do you support local municipalities enacting reparations to Black Americans? Will you protect this right at the federal level, as there has been direct pressure from the government to stop these initiatives?
Yes.
I would love to follow up on this question and ask how. What would your strategy be to protect local municipalities aiming to enact reparations, though they are being challenged at the federal level?
Well, there's already been a lot of movement to have reparations for people who've been taken off their land, kicked out of neighborhoods destroyed, and there's been movement for reparations for that. I believe in DEI practices in all colleges and institutions. I strongly support affirmative action in all kinds of hiring practices and for admissions. I think that's a good start. If we can get to reparations at the federal level, I'd like to support that as well.
Thank you. I'd actually like all the candidates to answer this question.
I'm a professor at UNC Chapel Hill, and that university was built on the shoulders of slaves, and we recognize that as the university with one small sort of monument, and it's a token. It stands near where Silent Sam once stood, which is the Confederate soldier statue. My wife was present when that statue was tumbled, and supporting students, my wife's also a professor, supporting students who were protesting the honoring and reverence of a Confederate soldier and the Confederate soldiers who fought from North Carolina, at UNC particularly. So I feel this, it's something that is really like I can reach out and touch it, and so I feel very close to that. It's very important that we as a society recognize that a lot of our wealth was made on the backs of persons who weren't here on choice.
To reiterate for the other folks, the question is, how will you protect local municipalities' rights to enact reparations, even with pressure from the federal government, or the state for that matter?
So Congress passes laws and legislation, so I would advocate and support law that from the federal government that gave local communities control over their destination, including reparations and other pieces that are local control. So absolutely I would support federal legislation that codified that.
I believe in honesty in regards to this. Specifics, I'm still thinking about that. I don't have an answer in this moment, and I would rather not bullshit you. What I do think needs to happen, and one that I am absolutely willing to have, is the conversation of systemic racism and how ingrained it is to American culture and American history. And when we recognize that and actually face it head on, that will allow us to continue to fight towards an America that actually is a melting pot and not stagnated and segregated.
Thank you. I have a couple more follow-ups about direct policy, reparations policy in the House, just to ground us down. I recognize that you don't have these bills in front of you, and so I'm not asking you to be a policy expert. Okay?
Thank you.
Okay. There are several bills, as I mentioned, and one prohibits the federal bailout for state and local governments that enact reparations. So would you support, essentially, it's a bill that says companies that are charged with paying reparations, they can't then be bailed out by the same state, that federal agency that held them accountable. Would you bail out the same people, the banks, for instance?
I'm not quite sure I exactly understand the question. Bailout banks because of...
H.R. 2100, No Bailouts for Reparations Act, was introduced in March 2025. The bill aims to prohibit the federal bailout for state and local governments that enacts reparations for slavery.
I vote against.
I'm not 100% certain about what that bill actually does, but again, I go back to my original statement. I support local communities in that regard.
Yeah, reparations can come in many forms, and being bailed out because of some kind of financial product that you've made or some kind of financial gift that you've given that needs to be given, it seems sort of like a bankruptcy issue, and there's a lot of problems that our country has with bankruptcy law that I'd be willing to look at changing, but I would not support a bill that stated that there's no federal help for companies that are trying to enact reparations.
It's, if I understand this correctly, that the bill would harm banks or punish banks.
I shouldn't have said banks specifically, that was an example.
Okay. Punish companies who are enacting reparations.
It would seek to provide financial bailouts to folks who are
I see. So it would help companies who are enacting reparations by bailing them out.
It said it would specifically not.
Let me rephrase the question so that we don't have to, I'll just put this in a different way. Would you financially support at the federal level local reparations? Will you legislate money and dollars
Yes.
coming down?
Yes.
Yes.
And then as you do that, would you then help the companies that are impacted because of this support to local
No.
areas?
I'd have to say possible. I'd have
Fair.
to know more
Yeah.
about it, so
Let's-
it's difficult to...
Fair enough.
Thank you.
Move on. Okay. Thank you. Y'all doing okay? Yes. Okay, it's quiet back here. It's hot. Okay. It's like,
It's really hot up here.
yeah, it's really, like it's really hot. It's just a little democracy in the room. Yay, democracy. Okay. We have so many issues going on in this country, y'all. You know, we have to really get to the nitty-gritty of it. Okay, let's talk about voting, of which you all should have clear opinions about. Yes?
Yes.
Within North Carolina, we had our own residents and friends have their votes thrown out because of changes to their last name. Some of these free and fair elections acts have been seen as actual voter suppression that would directly disenfranchise women who typically change their last names more often because of marriage. So these set of questions are around voter protections and free and fair elections. Are you in favor of policies like the SAVE Act that would limit the types of IDs that can be accepted at the polls? Would you support legislation that bans universal mail-in ballots? I asked this, but I'm gonna ask this a different way. There's a current bill that proposes to limit states to a single congressional redistricting, preventing the frequent changes after the census. Would you support this bill?
Yeah, sounds like a good idea. Should be only at the census.
Pardon?
Should be only during the census year anyway.
Is there anything that you as candidates would like to speak directly to us about regarding voter suppression and how you will protect our rights as voters at the state and federal level?
Is this like a 1-minute question?
This is a 1-minute question.
Okay.
Thanks for asking.
For the first thing, as far as the gerrymandering, all the decisions that are made about districts need to be made by an independent board. There's probably 8 or 9 states that are doing that already, like Arizona and Michigan, I think, California. We need to make sure that the boards that make the districts are truly independent. Protecting voting is so important. Voting should be as welcoming and as inclusive as it can be, and Republicans are certainly not trying to let that happen. They're trying to take over Secretary of State races, which we have to watch out for. They're trying to, as far as I've heard, they're trying to post ICE agents at polling locations. It's just a really scary time, and we need to make sure that we win in the midterm election so that we have some more control over that.
Voting is the fundamental foundation of a democracy. We need to do everything and all things possible in order to protect everyone's right to vote. We have, in this administration and at this time, in my lifetime, I've never seen anything so dangerous than where we are right now. And I will do everything as I can, if I'm elected to Congress, to support everyone's right to vote in free and fair elections. Thank you.
Any legislation that comes in touting the free and fair elections conversation is fundamentally disingenuous. If we look at it from the 1980s, there have been about 99 cases of people voting when they did not have the rights to vote. So when we see things like the SAVE Act, it's a non-issue that they are conflating to an issue. Personally, just as it's the responsibility of, American citizens to make sure that their voice is heard and vote, I do think that by putting things like identification laws and specific ones and making sure that it has to match this document and that document, it puts the onus onto the people when in fact it's supposed to be on the government, if that makes sense. And also from a personal standpoint, I think that we should have an authentic conversation about requiring voting.
I agree with Zelda. I think the SAVE Act is a straw man sort of argument, and is essentially a non-issue, and they're basically trying to turn something that they're trying to flip it around to make it an issue to weaponize in a way to suppress voting. Voting is the one thing that we have in this country that makes us who we are, and I believe that to be sacred.
Okay. I will stay on voting when we pass the mic back down to Zelda, and we'll go there again. I'm happy to Zelda, please. Thank you. I'm happy to hear that. My follow-up question is, can you all share specific policies that you would champion that do increase people's accessibility to vote, that you all are familiar with, if any?
I mean, considering that I mentioned it on the tail end of my last answer, I would say required voting. Plenty of other countries do it. It does not mean that you have to put a decision down. A lot of places have it so that way you have to go there and say, I am abstaining, and that is counting as you showed up and you do not want to go further than that. But when we require it, way less likely that we're going to run into issues with fraud. When you require it, you promote people's constitutional right to vote and start having a conversation about wanting to hear their voice rather than giving them the choice if they might want to share their voice. So that's where I'm at with that.
Great, thank you.
I would like to see us promote voter engagement, not necessarily mandate these things, but to make sure that the education of our voters is in place. Make sure that we have all of the times available. You know, early voting is different every year. There's nothing consistent about it. Lots of those things. You talked about voter identification, making sure if we're going to do that, that it has a lot of different options for people and what that looks like. It should be free and fair. Right now, if you ask for an absentee ballot, you actually have to pay for the postage to send that ballot back. That's not free. That's like a poll tax for some folks that are doing these things. So there are lots of things that we can do to protect our elections and make sure that they are open as much as possible for people.
Thank you.
I fully support ballot boxes. I fully support mail-in voting. I fully support people being to go out and pick up people's ballots. And I think the best way to keep that as a safe institution would be to have a completely sealed box, not even with a lock, maybe welded shut or something. And it has a way for people to put a ballot in the slot, and then you can go out and go to people's homes who have trouble getting to the polls, and then they would be able to vote more easily. Certainly making it easier for, I don't even support a voter ID in order to vote, because I mean, basically what that means is that you're required to have a voter ID in order to participate in the United States democracy. And it's not a law that says you have to have a voter ID.
This time I'm going to agree with Richard. Being last, I don't have very many options. Yesterday I was canvassing houses in Bent Creek neighborhood where I grew up, and I was knocking on doors, and one person who answered the door said, you know, I was just sitting down looking at the candidate list, and I said, well, you know, I'm a candidate, I'm on there, you know, and so she asked, you know, we don't get any real information about these people, and it's hard to figure it out. And as a normal sort of like person living in whatever suburban neighborhood, she was having a hard time, you know, deconvolving that all the people that are there. And she said, "Can you help me?" And I said, "Well, I'm a candidate. I'm not supposed to offer you advice on people. And I can explain. I've met almost all of these people. I can explain them to you. But that's an example of educating of the lack of education in our voters."
Thank you. Returning to climate, there are, as we've discussed, climate health challenges for folks, whether they're who are often low income and disenfranchised communities find that landfills are placed in their area. After Helene, we had much discussion about where the debris piles would go. This is leaning a little less to yes or no in this moment, but I'm curious about how you all will take race and class into account as you seek to legislate fair climate policy.
Climate change is a real thing, and it affects each one of us. It doesn't matter what the color of your skin is, and it shouldn't be it shouldn't disproportionately affect one population over another. when we think about affordable housing and placing it in like where are we going to place affordable housing, we shouldn't put it in a floodplain. We shouldn't put it in places of where there's potential danger. And I think that's and we need to harden the infrastructure that supports those efforts to the affordable housing efforts.
I hold different views from my co-candidates. I really feel that climate change is something that we need to do as much as we can about. Frankly, the data centers that we have, there's already a big push for those to be powered by renewable energy. But I feel in the end, it's really an economic issue. If everybody was able to do well enough to have a nice home, be able to save money, give their kids a good education, I think that in the cases of disaster, we can kind of pull together, maybe have a program where people in rural communities who aren't working can go help with the construction, with the reconstruction of places hit by disaster. I think it's something where we just have to pull together and make sure it's not a wealth gap issue.
I think throughout our history, whether it's climate change or other things, that some of our most, vulnerable, socioeconomically depressed people are the ones that bear the brunt of these things. And I think it's time for us to make sure that we take a look at the harm that we're doing to these communities. In community health, that's been really what I've been about, advocating for those that are being left out and left behind, and making sure that our most vulnerable citizens are not bearing the brunt of these policies that we're doing. We all have to accept what's happening, make changes to that, and accept this equally across the board, and not have these things fall on some of our most vulnerable folks. Thanks.
The number one polluter in the world is the United States military. Like, hands down. I support a drastic reduction of foreign wars. I'm someone who has lived my entire life with the United States in a war. I know so many people who are sick of us getting into these foreign conflicts when we have people in our country that are starving, that are struggling. So I think that we need to reduce the amount of money that we are giving the military. They need to actually pass an audit. I think that is a fantastic step. I think that we need to invest in climate resilient infrastructure, especially here in Western North Carolina, which will ultimately bring tens of thousands of union paying jobs that can't get outsourced or given on over to AI, which is incredibly important. The writing's been on the wall for God knows how long.
Just one more second. I appreciate that. I just want to make sure that for our audience there was a clear answer on how you will ensure that low-income communities and people of color are not disproportionately impacted by any of those policies or ideas named. What will be your practice to ensure that?
I would definitely take an equity lens in regards to it and making sure that those who cannot afford are given the opportunity so that way they can be lifted up to the standards of everyone else. I think that is an incredibly important portion about that. I also support talking with local communities. They're going to know the impacts of climate change and companies and fracking and all of those things more than I'm going to. The part of being a congresswoman, someone who's going to be a representative, is you actually have to talk with the people about what's going on. So I would make sure that I'm talking with them about what it is that they want to see and then moving forward from there.
Thank you.
As we've talked about before, and as Elda said, local control, but there has to be some standardization as well to make sure that those questions about these concerns for low income are being addressed. So I believe that the federal government And a role in Congress is to make sure that legislation is passed, that when these things are being discussed, that we're making sure that we're looking at these particular issues that need to be addressed, are addressed, and then at that point in time, once that standardization is done, allowing the local communities to do what they need to do for their communities, but make sure it's within the guise of, we have to protect our folks that are going to be most vulnerable. Thanks.
Yeah, you look at Hurricane Katrina and what happened in New Orleans, and you can see how that can happen to a community. We need to promote minority businesses, minority employment, minority affordable housing. It's interesting that you're, a couple of blocks from South Slope here, and it was supposed to be it was at one time a historic minority community, and they put up a few pedestals, but I lived in South Slope, and I walked my dog all over the place, and I never ran into a neighbor who was a minority. So some affordable housing there would be a good start. I just think it's an economic issue. Climate change is not going to stop. I don't think there's any scientist now that believes that we can stop climate change. It needs to be an economic issue where poverty is defeated.
As a scientist, I agree. Climate change is a real thing. And as I said before, affordable housing shouldn't be placed in positions of danger. And maybe we didn't know that was a position of danger when back 50 years ago or whenever that housing was built there, but we know now. And so don't rebuild in vulnerable spots. That's all I have. That's all.
If a bill was presented to refund our climate agencies, strengthen FEMA, or protect public lands like our national parks from drilling, would you vote yay or nay? Yay. Healthcare. I'm sure some of you all have yays or nays and things to say about this. Do you believe that healthcare is a human right? Do you believe, or yay or nay, for universal healthcare to all? Is housing a human right? Do you support a universal basic income? Dr. Hedsteth?
I'm not against it. I'm not sure. I would likely say, but I'd like to know more about it and how that looks like. But I also think that if we can cover social services, healthcare, housing, affordable childcare, those sorts of things, that that may relieve some of the need to have a basic income. So I'm not opposed to it. I'd just like to know more about what that would look like.
Would any candidates who do support universal basic income like to speak about why they do?
A basic income could be something like people who make under $80,000 a year could receive $1,000 a month as part of a way to cover their expenses. This could save people's lives. This is saving people from falling off of a normal life into a dark place that they can't escape from. $1,000 a month. There was a Democratic presidential candidate who suggested it. I don't feel it should be given to anybody who has a certain amount of wealth, savings, or anything like that. But it's just a cash payment would be very useful to a lot of people.
This time I'll agree with Lee.
You give $1,000 to a billionaire, we're never going to see that money again. You give $1,000 to the working class, it goes straight into the economy. It goes straight into the local communities, and that's going to do a lot more towards actually repairing and revitalizing areas than giving it to billionaires and hoping that trickle-down economics finally decides to show up.
Would you all support a bill, yea or nay, that raises the federal minimum wage?
Yes.
Would you support bills that rebuild the aging infrastructure, bridges, roads, and water lines across the United States? Is that a yay?
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, I have a complicated, I don't want to go into it, but
It's okay, you're okay.
Look, I'm a civil engineer, and it's just an interesting fact that the people who grade our infrastructure, they put a grade in every state on the bridges and the roads and the power capabilities. The people who grade those items, it's the American Society of Civil Engineers. Now, I'm a civil engineer, and I know what I would give a state for their grade if I wanted funds to go to the state. I think it's more important to have an honest opinion of what's actually the infrastructure is like. And we need to really have a good process to sort out where the money is going and where it's needed, especially with this I-26 corridor with Patton Avenue. I think that money could be spent towards Helene recovery instead of a new project that's going to hurt the economy of that area.
Thank you. Some nations are moving to ban the use of social media for youth under a certain age. Would you support any bills proposed to ban social media for young people? Dr. Hudspeth, would you like to speak to your nay?
So I think social media it has proven itself to be detrimental. I would like to see us have some more structure to this, just an outright ban. How practical is that? What does that look like? I'd like to see, so I know Australia is doing some of that. Let's see what that looks like. I think getting it in our schools, education, parental education, all of those things. I think we also need to hold social media companies accountable for the things that they are doing and to restrict those things. When it's a blanket, we're going to ban it, I just have to think about what that means before I sign on. That doesn't mean that I don't understand the consequences of what is happening to society around social media.
Would any other candidates like to speak to why they support a ban?
So I have a background in psychology. I also have a background in addiction and recovery. And social media addiction is a serious thing. It's been proven that social media at times has perpetuated eating disorders and very fragmented thinking. I think that we dropped the ball, honestly, on social media to the point where it is detrimental, to the point where it's negatively affecting our younger generation's ability to have critical thinking and longer attention spans. And when we do not set up our children or the younger generation up for success, we are ultimately doing them a disservice.
Yeah, it's a funny statistic. Children know that they feel bad when they're using social media a lot of the time. They don't want to use social media, but they're addicted to it. They have to use it. And part of that is the way it's ingratiated in their friends and their parents using it as well. It's a very difficult issue, but below a certain age, you should not be on social media. There should be kind of like a beeper where you have a text phone device that doesn't have the smartphone aspect of it, and you can use that for your children.
I have two young daughters, and one of them had serious problems coming from scrolling through social media, and I feel like it is unnecessary. I didn't grow up with social media, and I think I'm more or less okay. I mean, I got problems, but we all do, and so I think it's important to regulate that in a very sensible and thoughtful way.
Thank you. 2 more yes or no's for this question, everyone. Okay. The first of those is if a bill was presented to raise corporate taxes or tax billionaires out of existence, would you vote yay or nay?
Out of what?
Existence.
I,
Tax them so much it couldn't be possible to be a billionaire.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
So that would be
I would tax
just
them a lot.
multi-millionaires.
I don't know about taxing billionaires out of existence.
Okay, thank you so much. All right. And lastly, one of the roles, as I mentioned, of your body is to have federal oversight and to respond to any federal overreach that we see happening. If we still have the same president and cabinet that we do today, would you support articles of impeachment of this administration?
Everyone, or pick and choose? So I support using the impeachment, the articles of impeachment, yes.
Would you impeach our current president?
I would like to, but I also want to get things done for the American people. And I believe that there are folks in this administration that should be accountable for the things that are happening, and he should also be held accountable. But we also need to get things done. We need to pass health care. We need to do these things as well. And if we get enmeshed in what we saw in the first term, I think what we will see in this district, you will have a Republican back in the seat in 2 years. And I don't want that to happen. I want us to be successful getting things done for the American people.
Can I see, thank you for that. Can I see there were 2 yays that would impeach and then 2 nays? Will you pass to your yay to the left? You do support this?
Yes.
Okay. Of the current president?
Yes.
Thank you. And other members of the cabinet, should they be seen as unlawful, like?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. You can go that way. Mr. Whipple, you can say why you don't support Article.
Well, it's the same reason as Dr. Hudspeth. I feel like he got his opinion from me, frankly, because I've been saying that the whole time we've been having these forums. It was harmful to the Democratic Party and to the rule of law, and to get 66 senators to vote for impeachment, I just don't think it's a reasonable thought, and we do need to get things done for the country.
The buck has to stop someplace, and I think the presidency is where that's where I think it stops.
May I?
Please, let me redirect too. I mean, if it came up from leadership and they brought it to the floor and it was something that I had to vote on, I would vote for impeachment. But I'm not gonna submit something like that.
No one is above the law. What is happening every single day is we have an administration that is adding 6 or 7 things to the fire while our current legislation over in Congress is trying to do 1 thing at a time. So when we have an agent of chaos that is doing as much damage as he is, I find it very difficult for us to actually do anything of meaning without first removing the issue in the first place.
Thank you. A follow-up question that, oh, please.
I feel in my platform there are things that I can get done with Republicans across the aisle that are meaningful and that will help general people in America without starting with impeachment.
A follow-up question that I have for you, this is actually just for me. We are seeing the release of the Epstein files all over the place, and one of the things that Pam Bondi said was this will topple, one of the threats is this will topple the structures as we know it, and the systems as it were in this country, and yet these are criminals. These are people who have committed egregious crimes to young people and women with impunity under the idea of rule of law and reaching across the aisle. And so what would you say to voters who are frustrated by the answer that we will continue to be diplomatic to people who are harmful in order to sustain a particular level of systems continuity?
I mean, the Attorney General is just protecting the administration and themselves. I mean,
Sure, so as a member of a legislative branch, what would you do about it?
well, there's, I think Richard Hudspeth mentions their names, but there are people that are really trying to get things unredacted and unscrubbed. I mean, the fact is, I believe it was the FBI that actually took things out of the Epstein files that we're not even seeing as a redacted area. So all of I would push as a representative to get the names of Johns, I guess you'd say, unredacted and unscrubbed.
I think this feeds back to our last question, how would impeach the president. Other countries are taking action on public figures that were mentioned in Epstein files at even less than our president. And so, in this instance, we take lead from our neighbors, our colleagues, and impeach call it out. This is a crime. You shouldn't be president.
Let it topple, let it fall. What we've seen in the Epstein files is absolutely disgusting and abhorrent, and people need to be held responsible.
Would you be so kind as to repeat the quote from Pam Bondi?
That if we, oh gosh, not me quoting.
Paraphrasing is fine, too.
Paraphrasing is like, essentially, and multiple people have said this, that if we saw all the names, it would topple our systems as we've known it, and this is used as a defense to protect these folks. And so I'm asking this specifically because there was, I would argue, a sort of related notion about wanting to be productive in a body that maybe has pedophiles and nefarious actors in it. And so what is your stomach for rebuilding a new nation and making tough decisions that will help lead to a better union? Or are we going to play nice?
So in regards to essentially the toppling of the institutions that we have, my answer is going to be, and I'm going to channel as much Donald Glover as I can in this one. Good. Because I don't want to live in a nation that is protecting pedophiles, that only exists because pedophiles are at the top. No one is above the law. Bring it all down, burn it to the ground if necessary, because a nation that is founded upon pedophilia and the absolute deplorable acts of abusing children is not a nation that we need to be associating ourselves with. We are better than this.
Lastly, we have seen in this current, moving on. We have seen in this current climate as representatives go to DC and make decisions and they vote, and maybe they disgruntle their constituents, they then stopped holding their own town halls, showing up to meetings. I would like to hear your personal pledge and or commitment to being accountable to us. How will you ensure that you stay connected to our voice and committed even if we are frustrated with you?
I vow to not shy away from having hard conversations, to not go on to virtual town halls where all of the questions are vetted. A part of being a representative is you gotta listen to everyone. And you need to display a level of unconditional positive regard and have those hard conversations that you don't necessarily want to have. Because that's the job. That's the way it works. I want to be held accountable. I want my constituents to hold me accountable. I want my family to continue to hold me accountable. And I will also abide by a vote of no confidence. Through a ballot measure, if the question is asked, should Zelda Briarwood step down because she is not doing a good job as our congresswoman, if 60% or higher say yes, I will step down, not because there's a law, but because it is the moral right thing to do.
I've had difficult conversations my whole life, whether it was patients, families, employees. So I was running a health center, will not shy away from difficult conversations. I will show up, I will be there. And I'll take the heat. Been doing it my whole life. And voters have that opportunity in 2 years. 2 years goes by really quick to vote me out if indeed I were elected this time and I wasn't doing the job that people expected. So I will continue to engage as I'm doing in this campaign with folks, whether it's going to be a difficult conversation or a cheer session. Doesn't matter. I'm going to be here and be representative of all of the people of Western North Carolina.
Yeah, that's a really important point that Zelda Briarwood almost always makes, is that when you're elected, you represent all of Western North Carolina District 11. And when you go to a town hall, you need to be able to communicate with the people and understand what their grievances are and what they want to happen in Washington, but also in Western North Carolina. Hurricane Helene is going to be a huge issue coming up where we need to get people the funds that they deserve. And I feel like as a civil engineer, I'm really the best candidate to oversee that recovery. I know about construction and I know about budgets and rules from local, state, and federal regulations. But I will hold myself up to the people. I'll attend town halls. I want to be on radio shows and TV shows. I'll be out there and I'll be available.
One of my absolute favorite things to do is to walk around towns in Western North Carolina. Also the woods, but there are fewer people in the woods. So today I walked around Asheville and just talk to people and figure out, okay, well, what are they feeling, right? And not surprisingly, most people aren't even attuned to that there's an election going on. They're living their life. They're trying to live their life and get by. And so, so the key thing is to talk to people and to say, hey, I want to listen to you. You're heard. You're not just ignored. And whether that's in Burnsville or in Asheville or Marshall, or wherever, it doesn't matter.
Thank you all. With that, that concludes this first portion, and I promised a bathroom break to everyone. So we will reconvene at...
Welcome back!
Okay. Well, this is the fun part where I start getting Post-its. No, I like it. It makes me feel alive. All right, we have some open-ended questions here that are going to root us down a bit into what's happening in Asheville, but of course, there is consistency across many of your districts. But if you do see a difference between the city community's interest in any of their rural counties that you support, I would love to hear that, as there are residents moving all throughout our area because of push-out. Due to rising housing costs, which brings me to my first category of questions regarding development and housing infrastructure.
Wonderful transition.
I was thinking, I was like, wow. Thank you for that. Black Ashevilleans are familiar with the lack of housing in this community. There's a storied history, of course, including urban renewal that led to the creation of housing projects, with some families thinking that it was a temporary solution and they were promised housing, and that housing has never come. Instead, there's been gentrification and the investment of dollars in building a tourism economy, which has raised housing prices. We also have housing infrastructure being sort of built one on top of the other, but not with affordable housing prices. And we're seeing folks from other regions move into this community and outpace, outbuy, out-earn folks, skyrocketing rental prices, and then sending folks out of the Asheville City Center to other parts of the state or to counties that they wouldn't have chosen otherwise. This series of questions, or in general, I would like each of you all to first talk about what your vision is for affordable housing in the state and what you would do to legislate and fund the creation of housing for all, as you all spoke to housing being a human right in the first portion of this session.
As a licensed civil engineer, I feel like I'm the most qualified because I have the most experience with the construction of housing. I really feel like there's kind of a two-pronged approach. One thing, if you're going to build a subdivision and the owner of the contractor has to first submit a project that's worth a percentage of what the other subdivision is, that will go towards affordable housing. And that project has to be built first. Because they will always say that, oh yeah, we're going to build this subdivision and then we'll build affordable housing afterward. And it never happens. So that's one thing. Also, if you build a subdivision, you can include affordable housing in the subdivision. Just have some duplexes or a small tower where there's affordable apartments and condos. You know, if you build that with the subdivision that you're building, I think that's a great plan. Also, right quick, these plans could be purchased by the city of Asheville or Buncombe County so that the architect plans are already in place for the contractors to use.
So part of the solution, I believe, to what you're asking is a state level problem, and we're running for federal office. So from a federal point of view, I think we should mandate dollars that can come here and help build affordable housing. I don't know that the federal government should be telling local municipalities where to put affordable housing. So you could stipulate that the affordable housing needs not be in, for instance, the floodplain or something along those lines. But I also I feel like the local government should really have control over what's going on in that kind of situation.
For myself and the audience, just for clarity, when I say affordable housing, I don't inherently mean low-income housing. I mean housing that all people can afford at any income bracket. And the question is, to your point, at the federal level, how would you legislate or create policies, practices, nationwide initiatives to rebuild, build more development of housing infrastructure so that states don't bear the entire burden of what is a national problem?
Right. I think you could. So from a federal point of view, look at where job markets are and where the sort of the lack of infrastructure, including affordable housing, it is hampering the rise of that economy. And I think that would be someplace that those places would be prioritized, should be prioritized over others.
Yeah, I hate to do this, but I just wanted to add one thing. It's important to give people who have been historically living here in Asheville or in Buncombe County or in another county the chance to get the affordable housing, people who have been here historically.
So what would I do? I will ban private equity firms from purchasing residential housing because they have no reason to be purchasing that in the first place. I will establish federal funding that is aimed at turning vacant lots into affordable housing options for all socioeconomic statuses. And I will increase taxes on short-term rentals and vacation rentals within city limits because working-class families should not be priced out of where they are employed. Furthermore, the current estimate is that we can solve homelessness for about $10 billion a year, and homelessness is a major factor that we need to take into consideration because it's a public health issue. Those experiencing homelessness have high rates of chronic mental health and physical health symptoms, co-occurring disorders, barriers to care, such as the inability to access when needed or comply with medications. So it is a multifaceted thing that we are responsible for doing something about at the federal level.
There are folks that are actually solving housing and affordable housing issues right now across this nation. We need to take these innovations and get them done here. I think we have a perfect opportunity to take the failed Helene recovery response that we've seen from the federal government and get, whether it is grant or even potential loan from the federal government spread out over a very long period of time, for us to have a big housing infrastructure bill here in Western North Carolina in order to help us rebuild after Hurricane Helene. And when I say this, this is forever affordable housing. And we have to use our local communities, our local nonprofits. This has to be a community owned. This is not a developer owned where they need 22% profit out of these places that they're building now. It is really the community health center model. And I'm a physician and I ran a community health center. It's about a public-private, nonprofit partnership to actually provide the goods and services that we need to provide, as we talked about, housing and human right. We need to get it out of this, this private enterprise of developers and get it into the hands of our communities, and a grant from the federal government or loan would be helpful for that. Thank you.
I want to follow up on this question to say that Black elders that have historically owned their home in historically Black neighborhoods in this community, while were priced out by rising property taxes, would you support legislation that freezes taxes for elders so that they are not taxed out of their homes? North Carolina was once a forerunner in education. We have now seen early childhood education be absolutely decimated, including K-12 education, and literacy rates plummet. And this is, again, a national federal issue. What will be your plans to build education back up in this country, understanding the connection between a strong educational system and the economy of our nation?
There is a role for the federal government. Clearly, states have a lot to do with the education system, but the federal government has much responsibility for that, to drive innovation, to hold states accountable for the system that they do, to make sure that some of our most vulnerable disabled students also have those opportunities to learn. What we're seeing in North Carolina, certainly Governor Hunt, who passed recently, was our education governor, and we have seen just a continuation of decline in North Carolina around that. And I think that the federal government has the ability to hold states accountable, to make sure that there are minimum standards of investments. I believe that there are several generational obligations that we have, and one of those is to make sure that we give every child the best possible education in order to succeed, because that is the key for everything in our future.
So education has been intentionally defunded because an uninformed populace is not as much of a threat to authoritarianism. So we absolutely need to bring back education. and make sure that it's not contingent upon someone's zip code. So some tangible things that I will do. I will undo the gutting of the Department of Education caused by DOGE and integrate pre-K into our school systems, provide free school meals to all students, because if they're required to be there, then we should be required to feed them. I will undo the voucher system pushed by the current administration, which only serves to funnel public funds into private institutions. I will raise teacher pay and make sure that they are properly funded by the state and the federal government, so that way teachers are not buying supplies for their own students out of their own pockets. And I will increase funding and staffing aimed at specifically addressing the mental health issues that are currently plaguing our students.
Yeah, I think universal pre-K is really absolutely important. It gives students a jump, and it definitely, there's all kinds of studies that have been done that it shows it helps students later on in their education. Also, free childcare will really help take a burden off of parents, and I'm absolutely for that. I have some ideas on that, new ideas. Also, I'm in favor of a system where after the school year is over, maybe teachers get a break for about a week or so. Then there's award-winning teachers and teachers that have proven track records, and they can be selected to do a paid continuing education where they do like a syllabus that shows other teachers that are also paid to take this continuing education how they inspire their students, what kinds of teachings they use to best educate their students, whether it's from first grade to 12th grade.
That's a great idea, Lee. It already exists, called the Keenan Fellows Program. It's run by NC State, which is, it pains me to say, as a Carolina guy. But teachers come in and they're paid to work in a research lab, and then they develop a curriculum and they share that with their peers. The Department of Education, I'm an educator. The Department of Education has to be not only re-established but bolstered, and so federal grants are super important for our for people who are have trouble in a normal classroom, and like my own daughter, and that's incredibly important. And those grants should be contingent on teacher pay, because our North Carolina is last in teacher pay, but 31st in outcomes, which means our teachers are kicking butt. I have family members who are mentally challenged in their everyday lives, and specifically my brother has schizophrenia, and he has since in his 20s received Social Security and low-income housing to help him live a life and actually get health care. This is a super important thing to me personally, and I believe supporting programs which not only help sort of help people say, okay, well, I'm a little different, but I'm not. That doesn't make me an other, right? I'm not an other. I'm a little different, and so let's keep us in society. Let's figure out ways to keep people in society.
Yeah, this kind of goes back to social media as well. I mean, the way social media becomes an addiction for teenagers, it's a real problem for that. We need to get kids off of social media, off of video games, and back together in groups. Perhaps after-school programs where students are given the chance to do sports, do art, do music. All of those things are really important for students' mental health, and that kind of art and music, a lot of that stuff gets cut. I feel that those programs are really important, and also being outside, maybe doing hikes, and if a student has a pet to identify with, maybe in the school. I know there's pets in schools too, but all of that is also very important.
As you may know, I'm a family physician, but I also ran Western North Carolina's largest community health center, Blue Ridge Health, and that covers 9 counties across Western North Carolina. One of the programs that we expanded in the 10 years that I was running that, our school-based health centers. So we staffed health centers across the counties in Western North Carolina. And what that allowed us to do was to put counselors there for mental health, but also physical health. We had providers that could manage that. Keeps kids in schools, keeps them, parents working. All of this was in conjunction with parents as well. So there was always parental communication support, etc. We were driving school-based health outcomes in a positive way. Right? Giving a place for kids to go in their school setting to receive, whether it's mental health service or vaccinations or to I have a headache. But it really is an answer that has already been done in Western North Carolina that has been tremendously impactful for our students.
So I mentioned earlier raising funding and staffing so that way we can adequately address the mental health challenges that our younger generation has. I'm grateful that we have community organizations like the Y, Big Brothers Big Sisters, as well as Scouts of America that can also provide opportunities for those who do not necessarily have effective parental figures. I think that we also need to increase awareness and funding towards domestic abuse and domestic violence. I also think that we need to have a conversation about promoting soft skills in the education system. Critical thinking, empathy, recognizing emotions, how to deal with emotions when they happen, understanding what anxiety is, understanding what depression is, understanding what an anxiety spiral looks like, how to support those who are ADHD, neurodivergent. All of these things are vital to our entire society, and we need to start teaching about these things early.
We know that poverty in and of itself is one of the main contributors to mental health crises, and the lack of resources, whether it be housing or food, often contribute to people's declining mental health and can exacerbate any sort of genetic challenges or things that are already within their body. Food insecurity is a big issue, knowing that many young people in our community go hungry or only eat at school. In Western North Carolina and these beautiful mountains, we have many local farmers of color, who are working to strengthen the local food system and create food sovereignty in local communities. Can you talk about any active policies or plans you have to increase additional and bolster our local food systems in Western North Carolina?
I firmly believe that our social safety nets are there for a reason. They're not handouts. They are making sure that we're taking care of the people, especially those that need it most in their hardest times. I already mentioned incorporating free school meals for all public school systems, so that way no one goes hungry, especially if they have to be there. And just as an example, free school lunches for all students would, current estimates are sitting about $11 billion a year. That's a drop in the bucket compared to some of the other spending that we do. If we live in the greatest country in the world or the richest country in the world, but we're not able to take care of our own citizens and actually provide an opportunity and hope and a future worth fighting for our younger generations, then we are failing.
Well, as we know, just a few months ago, our representative, Chuck Edwards, decided not to support SNAP benefits and the government was shut down. There are things that the federal government is doing, and we need to continue those programs, but we need to also expand our ability to make sure that everyone has these opportunities. You know, one proposal that we put out there that's going to help rural families is a tax credit for homegrown food. If you're already growing your own food, we want to give you a tax credit to help do that. Rural communities do that a lot in Western North Carolina as well as other rural communities. While we're giving agribusiness lots of different tax breaks, how about just to a family to put fresh homegrown food on their table? So that's one policy. We need to continue some of these others, as we said, SNAP benefits, universal child care is going to help with a lot of these issues around poverty as well.
Yeah, the prices of everything just keep going up and up and up, and that's inflation, and it's not going to stop. I mean, prices just go up. And what we really need is a living wage for people so that they can afford to live in a home, afford to have a car, afford to have their kids in a good education situation, afford to have food, like you're saying. My plan for a living wage involves tying the living wage to not just the population of the state, but also a population county by county, so that there would be a higher living wage in Buncombe County than a higher living wage in Wake County or Polk County. And Henderson County would be more populous, so there'd be a higher living wage in Henderson County. But all of these wages could be determined by the population of a county compared to the entire population of the state, compared to the entire population of the nation. Thank you.
There's in Burnsville, which is the closest town to where I live in Yancey County, there's one Ingalls, and that serves basically Avery and Mitchell and Yancey County. And it's always crowded, and so there's this little store that you have to go up the back road. You can't find it if you don't know where it is. That has fresh vegetables and eggs and other sort of produce, which varies depending on what they actually can get. And so this little store is, it's been there for a long time, and it is an example of local foods that are coming in, and some of those go to waste, right? Because not everybody knows about this little store, and so some of it actually is spoils before it can be purchased. And so I think having a federal program where we can disperse foods before they spoil would be a good thing.
Are you good? Yeah.
I think Richard's proposal definitely has its heart in it. I do think that we also need to have a conversation about the people who don't have land, people who don't have the time. Also, if you're living in a studio apartment with a bunch of other people and you're using the, maybe a garden plot, is everyone who participates in that going to be getting it, or is it going straight to the apartment complex? Inherently, growing your own food is a privilege that not everyone has access to. And so I would hope that we could modify this so that way it takes that into consideration.
Great.
You can grow your own food in an apartment, a studio apartment. My kids do it. We raised our kids gardening. Many people in rural counties do it. You can use this as a tax credit to grow your own food in a community garden. Bring and get more community together to do that. So it's going to be a pretty liberal tax policy in order to bring this to the people as well.
Thank you all. Many of you all mentioned nonprofits being people that you would, or organizations that you would partner with, are integral to how you see enacting some of the policies or practices that you described tonight. And yet many, in Asheville's economy, we have more nonprofits per capita You guys know that's my favorite fact. That's not the first time I said that. There are more nonprofits here. We've seen the beautiful ways that this formed an infrastructure of care around many of us during Hurricane Helene. And so this isn't necessarily about that, but it is to say that a lot of these state nonprofits are facing funding deficits because of actions at the federal government. And so as a potential representative of this region, knowing that our economy is bolstered by nonprofits, the tangible benefit that they serve in times of emergencies, your proposed willingness to work with them, what is your relationship to the fact that they might not exist due to lack of funding, and how will you support them?
Since I have the mic, I'll go first. So I've essentially lived in the nonprofit world really my whole life. And in the community health center world, we partnered with all sorts of nonprofits, whether it's Pisgah Legal, whether it's Manna Food Bank, whether it's Vecinos. We have done that in order to help bolster the other nonprofits around us. And that is part of what, to me, makes Western North Carolina so resilient, is that nonprofits, and what I've seen in the work that I've done, are there to work together and to make sure that our community gets the things that we need. We've worked with domestic violence shelters across Western North Carolina. We've worked in the jails to help on mental health issues as well. So all across, and that's what bolsters it. I'm definitely a believer in nonprofits, and I will look at ways to take this community health center model and to bolster that throughout all of our social safety nets that we need.
So one of my former jobs was as a case manager, and the title is certification for it is victim service practitioner, though I'm not particularly thrilled about that. That's a completely different story. With Our Voice, which supported survivors of sexual violence and human trafficking, I worked very closely with Helpmate, with Homeward Bound, Transmission, Reach, Safe Light, the list goes on. And in my time of working there, I saw so many wonderful people who were in it for the right reasons that, because of a loss of funding, lost their job. And it breaks my heart when I see people who are in this because someone else did it for them, that aren't able to do it because of a lack of funding, or if you're going to do funding, that you just use it as a political football, as Jamie would say.
I'm just curious because this was brought up. What was your title at your nonprofit, Richard? Richard, what was your title?
What's that? What was your title at your nonprofit?
I was the CEO.
And what was your salary for like a year into this? Salary?
And you're asking?
I'm asking because I have a plan. I mean, was it above 100,000?
Yes.
Okay, above 200,000?
Yes.
Okay. If you're working in a nonprofit, I believe a cap on your salary should be $200,000 no matter what. And right now we have nonprofits and we have for-profits. We have religious institutions. No one in a religious institution should be getting more than $200,000. That will allow them to hire more people if they like and give them a good salary, as well as a new idea that I have is to have a low profit. We can have a type of business that's a low profit, and it could be for people growing tobacco or gambling. You know, there's all different ways we could use this third category of businesses.
In Yancey County, after Helene, there were whole sort of, I don't know, they're not neighborhoods, but it's whole municipalities really that were washed away. And a lot of these were rebuilt by nonprofits, which sort of sprung out of nowhere. They sprung out of people's goodness, and so they. And I know two people who started it. They applied for nonprofit certification, and we're just sort of waiting for that. And so there's a bunch of red tape around creating a nonprofit in the first place. And so I think one of the things from a federal point of view we could do is make it more accessible for nonprofits to actually exist, make the ecosystem for nonprofits more nourishing, and by number one, making the bureaucracy around forming a nonprofit less nebulous, and number two, supplying support when those nonprofits are in need.
Thank you. For our final question, I would like you all to answer, and then you can do a closing. Answer the question, close, why should we vote for you? How do you plan to represent us? That sort of thing. We talked a lot about young folks during this, different sort of infrastructure and policies that can impact all folks. We didn't spend as much time on the elderly or people who are aging, the aging population in our country. As you close, I would like to hear any plans that you have for supporting the health and wellness of our elders in the United States, and then why should we vote for you?
So we are all members of the aging population, hopefully, and so I think people should have dignity when they age. They shouldn't have to face challenges in housing, like we were talking about taxing, property taxing out, like taxing them out of their existing homes. I've had to pay my mother's property tax for the last 10 years because she can't afford it. And that's in Yancey County, right? So we're not talking like a huge tax bracket there. So this is a dignity issue, and we should treat our aging population with respect and dignity by making things like taxing them out of their housing illegal. Why you should vote for me? I'm not in this race necessarily for Paul Maddox to be in Congress. I like to be in Congress. I think I'll do a good job. I'm in this race to flip this seat, and I'm 100% committed to that. I live in a rural county. I'm not from the sort of Asheville network, as it were, and so I see and I talk to people who are in the outlying 15 counties every day, and so I feel like I have a really good handle on what's going on out there, and I speak to them, and I feel like I can represent each of you with dignity and class, and I want to talk to each of you and figure out how we can make things better. Yes.
Yeah, it's a really difficult issue with our older generation and with Social Security and Medicare going the way it's going. We definitely need to have a system to take care of our older generations, and keeping Social Security and Medicare viable is one of the things I would do if I would go to Congress. It's just a weird thing. I mean, it used to be that you'd work all your life and then expect kind of your children to take care of you. And our younger generations are now facing a situation where they're having problems just taking care of themselves. And yeah, it's just a tough issue. But as far as for me being a candidate, I mean, I already stressed that I'm the civil engineer. I'm the best one to really tie down funds for Hurricane Helene recovery and know what the process should be for it to work. But also, I'm a mediator. I know what people see from both sides. I mean, I'm both liberal and conservative. I was Northern and Southern. I've seen things from all sides. So I am a mediator when it comes to me going to Congress. And not only am I a mediator, I'm also a military strategist. I've read all kinds of special forces missions, huge campaigns, strategy books on the military. That doesn't translate to just military battles. That's what we're in right now with the Republicans. So if you send me to Congress, I will fight to get our Democratic Party where they need to be to turn the tide in Washington.
To protect our aging population, we need to make sure Social Security is there for them. Right now, there's a cap on Social Security. Once you make over $184,500, you no longer pay Social Security tax. That alone, if you remove that cap, would stabilize Social Security in perpetuity, right? Forever, so stabilize that. Medicare, we need to continue to make that sustainable as a program. Bringing people into a universal health program like Medicare for All will actually help stabilize this. We spend $5 trillion, which is more than twice what other countries spend on healthcare. We have more than enough money in healthcare. We just need to spend it differently. Invest in primary care. Get everyone, now over 25 million people, in our health insurance program. And then the last thing I would like to address, I don't necessarily have all the answers and we're going to run out of time for that, but I do believe that a problem in our elderly population is social isolation. And we need to figure out and come up with some solutions around that. As far as my candidacy, as I've said, been a family physician, worked with patients my whole life, also expanded access to healthcare across Western North Carolina. I have a proven track record, so while Chuck Edwards was delaying Medicaid expansion for over 10 years, while he was cutting $50 billion from rural healthcare in North Carolina, I actually expanded care, more than tripled the number of patients now who have access to affordable healthcare across Western North Carolina to over 80,000 patients. We also were able to respond to Helene recovery as well, going to some of our most vulnerable areas. So I have a proven track record, the career of service in order to be, I believe, a leader for Western North Carolina. So my name is Richard Hudspeth. I ask for your support and your vote. Thank you for being here.
I don't think that people should be profiting off of other people suffering. I think that Social Security, as Medicare and Medicaid, these are not handouts, these are promises to the people who have contributed to our society, and say that you can retire with dignity. You have that right. You've given to everyone. We need to give back to you. I also think that we need to bring back pensions. I agree that we need to lift the income cap on Social Security. In regards to why vote for me, we have run a community-courted campaign, and what that means is we spent 7 months traveling the district, put 25,000 miles on our car, talking to the people about what their needs, wants, and expectations are, and we developed our platform from there. It's not my agenda, it's not the agenda of any party, it's the agenda of the people of Western North Carolina. Furthermore, I believe in honesty, integrity, and willingness to change. My allegiance is to the people. It's not to any corporation, it's not to any party, it's to the people of Western North Carolina. And I like to think that the work that I've done in public health, social services, direct services, and education are enough to show that not only do I care, not only am I welcoming the hard work, because the hard work is the prize, but that I'm in this for the right reasons. And my first and foremost responsibility is to support everyone here in Western North Carolina. Thank you.
Thank you. Everyone, let's give an applause to our panelists. Thank you all for running to represent us. Thank you to the audience members for coming and staying to the end and sharing our evening. Many of our candidates mentioned talking to folks who don't even know that there is a vote happening, and that's when we come in. We should be talking about where we're at, what we plan to do, and make sure that folks are knowledgeable of this very important primary. Thank you, everyone.
Any questions that you all want to ask us, please don't hesitate. Ask us the hard questions, that's what we're here for.